And in the book, he began to call it the planning community. And he said, the planning community is a place where all the poor people of India can come, and there will be someone there to listen to them. And then they will not be poor anymore. And I realized we don't really listen to people who we think are not educated, or people for whom we have to do something. They don't know, and that is why they are like that, and I better do something for them. I'm not listening to even the supposed beneficiaries of my work. And certainly we don't listen to people not like ourselves. So about India, which is such a diverse country, we better start listening to each other. Muslims to Hindus, the Hindus to Muslims, and the poor to the rich, and the rich to the poor, and the people who speak Tamil to the Singh. This country, our country, will not work harmoniously together unless we learn to listen to people not like ourselves. And I'm so sorry that, social media is just making the problem horrible.
This is the challenge, that you need the energy of the horizontal, which means people bringing their caring and their skill and their commitment and their agency. And you also need the vertical capacity to execute. And the reason why many collaborations turn into conversations that don't lead anywhere is they don't understand the how to employ both the vertical and the horizontal, or as I call it in a different context, both power and love. And and this is always a tension. And I guess maybe that's the biggest lesson I've drawn from this work, and relates to a question I want to ask you, if I may. I'm wondering what you personally have experienced to be not the straightforward parts, but the challenging parts, the problematic parts for you in trying to do this work of facilitating.
When I got into India, there was this sort of crisis in the background, as it were, but many of us were noticing the environmental crisis, the poverty crisis, and so on. But there was no compelling reason for people to come together, it seemed, as a group together to do something about it. So I wanted to start by evoking from them why they're here in the first place. I mean, you could do many other things at that time. And they expressed what they cared about, and some cared about children, or they just cared about the poverty, and etc. And something brought them together. And then he said, well, why is this happening? I mean, we are part of a system. So to use, and you know that well, Donald Meadows' expression of every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it's presently producing. So let's look at the system. Why is it that we are in this position in India, that there are many people who care, and maybe they're doing good things in their own, let's call them verticals, and yet the system is not working together. So why is so? Why is so? So that asking the question about why, what is happening here and why is it happening, is a very educative question for everybody. And you begin to have to ask others, what is your perspective? You also are in the same system, and you might be seeing things somewhat differently to me. So let's listen to each other. So listening to people not like oneself enables one to form a collective view of the system and what's happening in the system. That's a necessary starting point. Being mindful that just working on that one part is not going to even change that part, because pressures from other parts are going to come onto it. So then starting to enroll others in a process to say, if you were to support us a bit, we will support you in what you are doing. So you start getting a movement upwards.
I'm curious about what the principles or orientations that you would point to in the work that you and I are both trying to do.
And Mahatma Gandhi had this principle that for policymakers, that if you're going to take any tough decision, and you should be having to take many if you're a real serious policymaker, think about the benefit it will produce for the poorest, least advantaged person that comes to your mind or that you know. And so it was thinking about the other, and especially people who have no power in the system. How would your existence in the world help them? So ethical reasoning it needs to be, I think, brought into our companies for very sure, because our companies are run on the principle that if you make more money for your shareholders, then you're a good leader. And I think that's an unethical leader if you're just supporting yourself or your own tribe without, benefit for others outside for yourself. The second you said from our Indian teaching is systems thinking. Our Vedas are full of, you're a part of a very complex, beautiful world. So systems thinking as an orientation, and don't get too verticalized, don't get too focused unless you understand where those verticals sit within a larger system. And the third one, which actually my grandson taught me when he came to visit the Planning Commission, and he was 7 years old and wondered what the Planning Commission was doing, any good at all with so much poverty as he saw all around India. He comes from the United States. And so I tried to explain to him that Planning Commission was, as you say, like a vertical. We got it in charge and we're going to make sure that everything is all right in the country. And he just observed a little bit, and he's 7 years old. And he wrote a book on the Planning Commission, Adam, when he came back to school in the US, but what he did in the summer, yes. And in the book, he began to call it the planning community. And he said, the planning community is a place where all the poor people of India can come, and there will be someone there to listen to them. And then they will not be poor anymore. And I realized we don't really listen to people who we think are not educated, or people for whom we have to do something. They don't know, and that is why they are like that, and I better do something for them. I'm not listening to even the supposed beneficiaries of my work. And certainly we don't listen to people not like ourselves. So about India, which is such a diverse country, we better start listening to each other. Muslims to Hindus, the Hindus to Muslims, and the poor to the rich, and the rich to the poor, and the people who speak Tamil to the Singh. This country, our country, will not work harmoniously together unless we learn to listen to people not like ourselves. And I'm so sorry that, social media is just making the problem horrible. Yes, we have probably getting to the largest numbers of smartphones in the world, and this largest numbers of WhatsApp and stuff. So I'm going to ask you for advice. Now, here's the situation, Adam. What should one do?
I realized that this principle of verticality and horizontality, power and love, as I've called it in other contexts, are not adequate. And there is a third principle that's required, which relates to the ethical reasoning. And the third principle is justice. That if we only talk about vertical and horizontal, we're talking just about, well, how can my unit work in a way that works with other units? I mean, that's the essence of those two principles. But the third principle is, and how does it allow everybody to breathe and to grow and to live? And it's the interplay between these three imperatives that I think is the recipe, the not straightforward recipe, but the recipe for moving forward together. Moving is power, forward is justice, and together is love. And so if our work, or the way we're thinking about leadership, is how to help people move forward together, we need all three principles. And the vertical and horizontal, the power and love, will tend to reinforce the status quo. And that third principle that you attributed to Mahatma Gandhi is required if there is to be progress, rather than simply rearranging the deck chairs on a system which is producing results that are unsatisfactory.
Albert Einstein had said that we cannot solve the intractable problems that we have with the same approach that has caused the problems. And I've just read a study done by the Social Progress Initiative, which is a Washington-based think tank, and they projected scenarios that if we keep carrying on with our combination of vertical, horizontals, whatever approaches we are using, it will take us until 2082 to achieve the SDGs. And we know we'll be fried as humanity long before that. We have to have a very different approach to what? And the 17th SDG, I mean, the first 16 are about environmental issues and social issues. The 17th says partnerships, and it's such a simply said word, And we keep saying that. And so what we are delving into today is the essence of a collaboration which will change the design of the aeroplane in which we are flying together. I changed the metaphor from the Titanic to an aeroplane and we're all flying together trying to get somewhere. And if we have to reach these goals of the SDGs within the next 20, 25 years, and we better do that, we better redesign the very plane in which we are. But that's the dangerous part, because we are part of something. There's power in that thing, and there are ways of thinking in that thing, and we can't jump out of it. We've got to work with the things as they are and help everybody to start learning to think differently and work together. So I feel in India, this approach is very necessary, that we allow people to address their local issues collaboratively, keeping in mind the bigger picture of the SDGs, right? And everyone doesn't experience the SDGs in the same ways in different parts of our country, for example. So we need local collaboratives, and these are what I call the fireflies. I mean, there are people who with their own small energies on the ground produce light for each other and together. And so India will light up by fireflies arising rather than people from the top trying to coordinate this very complex country with the power. Am I on the right track, or what would you say?
Well, there's not the right track is I don't think ever a simple track, but yes, I think we need more and better collaborations and partnerships, but that requires in turn is more and better facilitation, and in particular not falling into the habitual, either the vertical or the horizontal. And so that's the kind of facilitation we need to get the collaboration we need to get the world we need.
Crystal gaze into the near future with our series Be Inspired, that takes you into the world of AI, medicine, space, good governance, economy, and so much more. Subscribe to our channel now.